Welcome to Dad Talk Today. The podcast for dads facing some of the toughest moments of their lives. We are here to walk with men through divorce, keep them connected to their kids, help them understand their rights, and work for change in family law courts. Moms, you are always welcome too. We are all about advocating for shared parenting and doing what is best for our kids. Here is your host, Eric Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Dad Talk Today. We're continuing on with the extreme biases inside of court and what we see going on inside of our country, and this is a story that I believe is going to affect many of you. I got today with me Mr. Jon Stremel. Jon, what's going on, man?
Hi, how are you? Pleasure to be here.
Hey man, first off, I'd like to say thank you for your service and everything you've done for this country. Could you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you did inside the Navy?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to, make a quick disclaimer that, the what I'm about to talk about today, these are my personal opinions and views. They're not necessarily those of the U.S. military, but I proudly served in the Navy for over 10 years, and I was an electronics technician. I'm an E6. Petty Officer First Class, and I'm currently stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which is where I'm coming from right now, which is why it's light out over here.
Yeah. So, you got a case, man. We'll just jump right into it. It's one of those that we know it happens, and it's sad because I don't feel like many men are speaking up to what is going on. I've talked to so many fathers. It's like I was hit inside the marriage. I was abused. I never touched her back. I was like, well, why didn't you say something? And it sounds like this is something that was going on, and you spoke up about it. Could you tell everybody a little bit about what you was facing, Jon?
Absolutely. And what you're talking about when it's really difficult to speak up, it's very easy to judge people, from the outside looking in, like, why didn't you leave? It's sometimes called victim blaming, which is essentially what it is. And it's really difficult to speak out. And as men, unfortunately, there's a lot of perpetuating stereotypes and pressure put onto us to be tough, to be the protectors. And when we're in a situation where we are not the protectors and we can't even protect ourselves, and we're in a toxic or abusive relationship, there's a tendency for men, not always, but a tendency to feel ashamed or feel like they are less of a man, which, it doesn't always happen on the other side. If a woman speaks out, they're not called less of a woman. If anything,
right.
They're lifted up, as they should be, for speaking out. When any victim is in an abusive relationship, sometimes it's hard to see the forest through the trees. So, I can speak from personal experience. I was in denial. That whole macho, aggro culture of the military added on to all of the other social pressures that every man faces. So, mine was sort of doubled up, and I tried speaking out early on, years and years ago. I spoke to my chain of command about it. I called a therapist, and I got every answer from, just hit her back, which, don't do that. That's terrible advice. If anyone tells you that,
Absolutely.
that person is not looking out for you.
And we're going to touch on that too, because it's a very common thing that people say.
Right. And so not everybody, I felt fortunate enough to have been raised by really good parents who taught me never to do that. I've never hit a woman. I've never threatened to, and to have, my military command, people above me say that's the answer, or, oh gosh, I had somebody say, oh, hire a crackhead to, rob her. And we could probably do a whole show on bad advice. But basically, when I tried to speak out, I wasn't believed. It was diminished, and ultimately, I just kind of had to learn how to live with it. And it was my own, personal battle that I was facing with myself, and it was just eating me up until we had a child, and then I saw that starting to happen to them, and it made it easier for me to speak up because I started to believe I deserved to be treated the way I was being treated, which, I did the typical, like, I made excuses for her.
Yep.
She was drinking, or like, oh, she was upset, or, and I've been guilty of it too, where I look at another couple, and before I went through my own experience, and I said, hey, why don't they just leave? It's really not that easy. And then when you have a kid, forget about it. That's your heart. That is your heart running around in a diaper. And if they're threatening to take your heart, take your kid, you just like what I'm trained to do in the military. You just go, aye, okay, do whatever you want to me. Just don't take my kid. And that's pretty much where I was coming from.
So when you said you started to speak up, what was that like? What was it like going to your superiors and telling them about what was going on? What was some of the conversation going back and forth? Was it accepted? I mean, did they laugh at you? What was that like?
For me, I internalized it, right? I internalized a lot of my feelings, and it got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. And again, being in that culture, being in uniform, showing up to work, doing my thing, I had to have some kind of a release. So I would go to the bathroom, or I would go to I worked in a class in a schoolhouse, and so I'd go to an empty classroom, and sometimes I would just cry. And I actually had someone in my chain of command, it was a female chief petty officer who saw that I was not myself, and I think she could see I had been crying, and she was like, what's wrong, shipmate? And she pushed, and she kept asking, and really, she could sense something was wrong, and she was the most helpful. She had been through some things herself, and she had said, we're going to go and get you some help. And so she sent me to a place in the military. For those who are in the military, they might be familiar with this program called the Family Advocacy Program, and it's where service members and dependents can go if they're having intimate partner violence or they want to report child abuse. And so she took me there, and then a whole other set of problems happened.
Right. Tell us about some of those problems, man. You got the mic, dude. We want to hear you.
Okay. I didn't want to just keep going in case
you're good. Take it.
Questions. Okay, yeah. So we went into the Family Advocacy Program. It was myself and a female chief petty officer. And we went into this small room, and the caseworker, she kept looking at the female chief, saying, what's wrong? And, she would say, well, he's going through some issues, he's right there, you can ask him. And she kept looking at her and not looking at me and asking me what the problem was. And again, it's that there's that bias, whether it's unconscious or not, that she assumed it was the woman who had the problem. And so she wasn't interested in hearing my side of things. Once we cleared that up and I did get to talk, the caseworker was very dismissive, very glib, very passive aggressive in some of her comments. And she was extremely dismissive, did not take me seriously. She actually had a pen and paper, and she goes, if I start writing down your complaints, then I'm going to be forced to open a case. And I said, that's great. That would be good. I would appreciate it, if you did that. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And so she looked at her watch. She was like, I got a 1 o'clock. You guys should leave. And I was just basically like, shoot out the door. I felt very unwelcome there. They didn't take me seriously. And, my chief was like, I am so sorry she treated you that way. And I told her, hey, it's not your fault. You're trying to help me out. And they just shooed me right out the door without doing any kind of follow up or anything. And if I may, there's a law called Talia's law, which is Talia's law. It's like the mandated reporter law for child abuse, but it's specific to the military. So what it means is if anyone on a military base, they get a report of child abuse, they need to do 2 things. One, they need to call the service member's chain of command. So let's say, if it's the wife of a dependent and she goes in and she starts saying, this service member is abusing our child, they have to, by law, call the chain of command and say, we got this report. They don't have to take her side. They don't take his side. They don't take anyone's side. They just have to let the chain of command know. So this family advocacy program, they never called my chain of command. The second thing they have to do is call either the police or child welfare services. Sometimes, some states, it's called child protective services. They didn't do either. They didn't call the police. They didn't call child protective services. So long story short, I ended up going in there 5 times seeking shelter for me and my son. My partner was breaking into the house, scaring the nanny. She was sending her mother and her friends to my son's special ed pre-K. My son has autism, which is a whole other level of concern when it comes to parenting. And I mean, she had people filming us, like just taking out the trash at her house. She was calling my command nonstop. Her friends were calling the command. It was really bad. And so I'm like, look, she keeps. Oh, and the other thing was that she was threatening to kill me. And I said, I need a place to just like chill. I need to like change my kid's diaper. I want to call, an attorney. I want to like mellow out because I'm telling you, and those of you who've been through this, when you're really in it, you're not sleeping. If you are, you might be having nightmares. You're not eating right. Chances are you're not practicing self-care. So I was going to like Walmart bathrooms and like changing my kid's diaper there because, and then again, not all stores had changing station for men to change diapers. And so yeah, I ended up going there 5 times over the course of 6 months. And at no point did they ever call my chain of command or call child welfare services or the police. I mean, I was going in there and you've seen him, Eric, but I was showing pictures of my son with bruises and we had witnesses, not just me. We had other witnesses saying, she's choking him and there's all these other allegations going on that they didn't even look at. They didn't even consider it. Yeah, there's a picture of the website there. And for the family advocacy program to just not even give me the time of day, not even allow me to like, hey, can we look into this? They said, we're really sorry, but unfortunately, we just don't provide the same services for men that we do for women. And, they weren't really sorry. It was all lip service. But, another thing too, they told me was we have cool down rooms for men, and then we have shelter for women, children, and dogs. And so I was like, wait a minute, dogs have more victim rights in the military than men? Does that sound right?
Sounds like family court too, man. I mean, that's crazy. The women can be victim and they need shelter, and the guy, he's just an angry, stereotypical guy. He just needs to cool down, right?
Right. Yeah, we're just angry like caged lions, and we just go and cool down and then get out. It's insane. And again, you know that if this were to happen the other way, right? So the family advocacy program that I went to was all females, right? Mostly septuagenarians. So, you know, there was plenty of moments for me to say, okay, boomer, if I wasn't so distraught and scared for my life, I probably would have said that a couple times. But, and again, just because they were all women, that's not on its own a bad thing if they weren't discriminatory. But they were, and you know that if it was flipped, right?
Right.
Let's just flip the scenario. A domestic violence shelter run completely by men that don't allow women, right? And then if women do come in, they say, you just need to cool down, little lady, and then walk out the door with no help. That would be awful, right? There'd be a parade, and rightfully so. But, you know, it's just harder for us as a society, I think, to have this conversation that, you know, men can be put in this situation too. And with this recent, you know, lifting of the ban of transgender troops, we also have LGBTQ troops who can now, you know, serve openly. So, you know, I actually asked one of the caseworkers, I said, what happens if you have same-sex couples come in? And they say, well, if they're women, they go to the shelter, and if they're men, they get put in the cool-down closets. And they're just brazenly, you know, sexist about it. I don't think they hear themselves when
John, all you had to do was identify as a woman when you walked up. That's how stupid of a world we live. I'm sorry.
I was joking with my friend. I'm like, all right, let's get some lipstick, and if that's what I got to do for my son, you know, like,
right.
Hey, Robin Williams did it in Mrs. Doubtfire, right? To be with his kids.
I mean, it's just crazy, though, man. I see the campaigns about men need to be better husbands. They need to be better fathers. You ain't even got a baby changing station inside of their bathrooms. And then if you are going through hard times, you're being, turned away from shelters. And this is a father that is out there fighting for our freedom. And the country that he's fighting for will not even fight for him in the hardest times. I mean, what's that like, getting back to duty, knowing that it almost feels like they could care less about your actual situation and what you're going through?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's ever blamed the military for being altruistic or caring too much about their service members. So I guess I've always felt that the military didn't really have our best interest at heart. And, you know, one could argue that that's not their job, is to take care of service members. It's to defend our country. But, you know, what bothers me is when they say we don't put up with discrimination. When they say we care about our service members. You know, when they say we want you to serve safely, we want you to, you know, serve alongside brothers and sisters and not be afraid of them. We want you to be afraid of, you know, all of our enemies, foreign and domestic. So when you have people and organizations within the military who are discriminating and nothing's being done about it, but then, you know, I go and I see that, we've just done this discrimination research panel, and here's a 100-page thing that says, you know, we need to listen more. And it's honestly, none of it is concrete. You know, they're right. Soft suggestions, right? And you know, I'm trying to advocate for service members, for the grunts, right? For, you know, I'm enlisted, and again, it doesn't happen to just enlisted. And I'm fighting for, you know, discrimination for all service members. The website that you had shown, I started because, you know, I introduced a bill, a Military Anti-Discrimination Act, and it is to give service members the ability to file claims for discrimination. And it might seem odd that a straight white man is introducing a military anti-discrimination bill, but you know what I think is important is that it can happen to anyone. And one of the reasons I don't mind being the face of it as I've worked with, different attorneys and other activists to help me write the legislation, is because, my son's story is important. And I think it's important for people to know that discrimination, it can happen to men too. And so the bill covers gender, race, religion, sex, all of the protections in Title VII and Title IX that literally everybody else has. Anyone else can sue for discrimination except for service members. So, long answer to your question about how does it feel to fight for that right, but then not to have it for myself? It doesn't seem right. And some people might say, oh, service members, if they can sue for discrimination, there's going to be all these lawsuits left and right. And I just want to say this to people who believe that. Those are the same arguments that were made when people didn't want African Americans to serve, when they didn't want women to serve, when they didn't want LGBTQ community. They thought the sky was falling and we're going to, just die as a country. And it's just not going to happen. I sometimes use the NFL as an example of an equal opportunity employer where, they still require people to do the job. So you don't see, wide receivers in wheelchairs or blind quarterbacks, right? But they don't discriminate when it comes to like, hey, your race or your religion. As long as you can do the job, which is what all I'm saying is that, hey, if you can serve your country, if you're willing to give your life for our country, none of those things should matter. That shouldn't matter. And so in the event that there is discrimination, that service member should be able to call witnesses, get evidence, hire an attorney, and then the burden of proof is still extremely difficult for that service member to prove discrimination. As you know, it's for anyone who's faced discrimination, whether you go through the Equal Opportunity Commission or if you're in the military yourself, it is extremely difficult to prove that. And so the military is the U.S. military is the closest thing to an entity that has unlimited funds, right? And any kind of damages, any kind of punitive damages that someone collects from discrimination, if they hire their own attorney, they go through the legal process, they're able to convince a judge or jury that there was discrimination, whatever kind of damages they get will be chicken feed compared to what the military has. And just having that right is so important. Having people feel safe to serve, people whose sons, daughters, brothers, sisters who are serving, just knowing that, hey, look, if something happens, they can hire an attorney, they can go to court, they can get some kind of justice. But right now, there's absolutely nothing. So the Military Anti-Discrimination Act will allow service members to have their day in court.
Absolutely, man. I think it's important to touch on what you were saying. Discrimination does not discriminate. It can happen to every single one of us, and we need to make sure that if something is happening, especially in our military, that somebody is listening. I want to bring that website back up really quick, though, Jon. One thing that you sent me, I listened to a few of your calls and stuff earlier, but I get down on this website, and I see your little boy's back right here, these little black bruises. What's going on here?
Yeah, so he had returned from his mother's with those bruises, and I had reached out to her saying, can you please tell me what happened? She ignored my multiple requests for it. Hours had passed. I had family there who saw it, and they said, hey, this is not right. And so I called the police. They came by, they took pictures, and CPS, I called CPS, and they said, oh, we'll come out within 24 hours is what they said. And so I said, all right. So police came, filed a police report. Child Protective Services didn't come out for another 6 days. And so by the time they saw him, the bruises were not there anymore. And they had said, well, we didn't see her do it, so we can't prove, we can't say for sure that she did this. She eventually told CPS that they did happen under her care. She gave them 6 different reasons, 6 different excuses as to where the bruises came from. Child Protective Services submitted a report naming myself as the sole safe and protective parent. But those physical bruises heal, but the invisible scars are still there. My son, again, being autistic at the time, he was nonverbal, so he couldn't tell me. He couldn't tell the police what happened. But I know that it has hurt him emotionally. I know that a lot of your people who follow your page or watch this, they struggle with co-parenting. If if you know that the other person is abusive and you are forced to co-parent because of our broken family court system, I always say don't add fuel to the fire. Like you raised your kids right, which if you're confident in that, like they will know. They'll know.
So, real quick, John, you said CPS did put your son in custody with you, correct?
Yes.
Did that happen right away?
No. I had to file a restraining order first, and then it happened. CPS, They couldn't confirm or deny, and we could probably do a whole show about how CPS is just, even though they were on my side in that particular instance, there are so many problems with CPS. I'm on the island of Oahu. There are 1.3 million people here, and there are 2 CPS caseworkers who go to homes and investigate. 2. And so anytime I would call, they're like, I'm on the other side of the island. I can't do it. I got this and that. And it's like, they said, do you have custody? I said, yeah. They said, keep custody and we'll come when we can. It took them 6 days, and it wasn't very helpful.
CPS is a disgrace. I agree with you 100%. But seeing those bruises, you can obviously see something's going on here. Yeah. What happened when you called the police? What did they do that night?
The police, they were not super helpful. Honolulu Police Department, they're a joke. They are not helpful. We had a bunch of young guys come by. I would render a guess they didn't have kids. And they just did just a real simple report. Didn't really follow up. I think they eventually called her. I don't even know if they did. But they kind of said the same thing as like, look, you got him, so there's no immediate issue here, so we're just going to leave. What's interesting is the very next day, my son had his autism specialist come to the house because I signed him up. I signed him up for everything. Because he didn't have, his mom in his life, I knew it was very important for him to have good, strong female influences wherever I can find them. So if there was like occupational therapist, I'll take it. Speech therapist, come on over, right? Like I was having these people coming over and spending time with him, doing sign language, doing whatever we could. She looked at it, she saw the bruises, and she had training in child abuse. And she had said, this is not a self-inflicted wound, because my son, kids hit their heads, when they fall, they stop themselves. So you'll see bruises here, elbows, knees, right? Around the crown, right? My son had he used to bang his head, but like the side lower back in the shape of a hand, come on. And she was like, this is not consistent with child abuse injuries. And she actually was like, I'm sorry, but I have to call CPS. I said, I had already called them. And she was like, oh, what's your case number? She called. She had said, I don't believe it's the father, but this does look like a child abuse injury. And then CPS was like, yeah, we got the report. We'll be out in a few days. And she actually, she ended up testifying, which I'm super grateful for that. Here's something that maybe some of your listeners can relate to. Um, there's something that is commonly known as abusive litigation, right? And you can actually use the court system to abuse your partner. And abusive litigation sometimes involves calling in everyone, every single teacher, every soccer coach, every whoever, and just making everyone's lives miserable. And what happens with that, unless there's an actual, unless there's a legitimate reason for them to testify, like they witnessed something, I try not to do that. I encourage people to try not to do that, because your kids, they don't have, they don't need to have every aspect of their life, every adult in their life be a part of the custody struggle. So like my kids' teachers, I want them focusing on my son's education. That's it. Like I want him to go, I want him to learn. If I talk to them, I want to talk about PTA meetings, what arts and crafts do we need to buy? What supplies do we need? What holidays are coming up? It's important to kind of compartmentalize. Sometimes, you might think it's helpful, but, unless like they witnessed some kind of an assault, it just hurts the kids. It right. Leaves them they're just surrounded by this echo chamber of just, they can't escape. And, part of being I think a good parent is allowing them to have, a piano lesson or whatever, something that isn't involving, the parents and their custody battle.
Right. I want to go back to a while ago when I was asking you about the cops, because I wanted to make a point. We was talking about, had it been the other way around. You said the cops wasn't very helpful when they came that night. They saw the bruises. Obviously something was going on. Now, what if that had been you accused of doing that, Jon? What do you think would have happened?
Oh, I think, I mean, I don't have to imagine. Like, I know. I'm fortunate enough to go to a state-run group therapy for domestic violence survivors, and I talk to some of them military too, because again, the military doesn't allow men into the survivor group. It's not just the shelter. They don't provide any services for men as victims. And I've talked to young Marines, doctors are in this group. It's civilian. It's everyone, because again, abuse doesn't know class.
Right.
Like rich, poor, whatever. There are men in there who just need help, and I've heard horror stories of them, calling the cops because their partner was pointing a gun at them, and the cops show up and arrest the man. It's all too common, and and again, there's been a lot of really great discussions about police involvement, like what the role of police in society should be, and I think that's really great. What happened, with Mr. Floyd, brought that on. Is like, do we need to introduce a bunch of cops with guns into a domestic dispute? Are they just having a row? Is there actual violence? Again, somebody smarter than me needs to come up with a better system for how we respond to these kinds of situations. But a lot of times the cops, they show up, they see the guy, they put him in cuffs, and then they say, okay, tell me what happened. Right. And a lot of times just the man being in cuffs, a case, man, if your kids see that, it's awful. So, yeah. So, there's a bias in the police, and it's men too, men.
Right.
Men, they assume that the men were always the aggressor too. So it's a pretty big problem.
So that, there's the other side of that. In no way am I taking up for the law enforcement or CPS when it comes to this. However, I've interviewed a few of the sheriffs, and they said they're told to stay out of civil complaints. What's their number one call? Civil complaints. And they get there and something's going on, and they said, really, a cop's not trained to get involved with these family law court cases. They're not trained for domestic violence disputes. They're just there to do the law. And that's where CPS could really step in if they had better training, they had more people, better pay, and they should be handling that. And I really liked that. And you're talking about, you got 2 CPS guys out of 1.3 million people in Oahu. There's no way they can give any of those cases the time that it needs.
Right.
I mean, and of course, I don't know how those guys are even getting their jobs done. I mean, and they can't say it's because they don't have enough money to pay these guys, because we know the multi-billion-dollar industry that's going on with family law courts and title IVD, the whole 9 yards. So you had a question, though. Let me find this, John. Chris Grau, I hope I said that right. He said, what did your command do when they became aware of the situation with FAP?
Yeah, great question. I think it's extremely important to have a command that has your back, that advocates for, the sailor, the soldier. My command, they really didn't know what to do with me. I still don't think they are fully aware of what was going on. But I did, I actually forgot to mention that the family advocacy program, when I went in and I said that I, needed help, I filed a discrimination complaint against them. I actually filed a lawsuit against them. 2 weeks after that lawsuit was filed, they sent a letter to my command saying that I was guilty, despite the fact they didn't receive any allegations. They didn't do an investigation. There was no, what they call an incident determination committee on me. And it took them 311 days to write a letter saying, oops, sorry, you weren't guilty. We apologize. Yeah, they said, if there's any harm that this may have brought you and your family, we didn't mean to. Something like that. Basically, the damage had been done after 311 days. My wife got a copy of that letter. She immediately used it against me, gave it to the judge, gave it to the custody evaluator. And there's no accountability. Again, I can't, as a service member, I can't sue that civilian who wrote that letter for essentially, libel. That was defamation of character. He released this to my command, and so going back to Chris's question about what my command did, that once that bell is rung, that like, hey, maybe this guy abused his kid, they're looking at me with everything I say has a little asterisk above my head, because they're like, man, did this guy do this? And I felt awful. I felt terrible. I wanted to give up. I really wanted to give up when I saw that they had sent this letter retaliating against me. And unfortunately, it led my command to start retaliating against me too. They ostracized anyone who helped me. They had me. It was essentially command authorized hazing is what they were doing, because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to do with me. I was diagnosed with PTSD because of what my partner did to me, but also because of what the family advocacy program did to me. And so there were certain things I couldn't do. I couldn't go back to a ship. And so, they took out their anger with me not being a sailor who can go to sea, by having me, I had to teach a classroom without any students. I was at a teaching command. They said, go and teach this class 2 times a day, the same lesson. They would go in there and, they had the other teachers turned against me, and, they were trying to like fail me, and they were forcing me to sign evaluations. I eventually got them on, like audio recorded some of them. In the state of Hawaii, you can have a one-party recording of them, saying, yeah, you have to sign this against your will, sign this, do this. I had trash dumped on my desk. They would pull out the power cords from the computer at my workstation. They would order me to do some work at the computer, and I said, I can't do it. There's no power. And they said, insubordination, huh? And so they would write me up, and they would just write me up and write me up and write me up. So I eventually had to turn in a whistleblower retaliation. There's a Title 10, of the U.S. Code has a military whistleblower retaliation law, and so I used that to file a whistleblower complaint. I got a lot of great help from the Whistleblowers of America. That has got me talking to other parents, in the military, not just parents, but really any whistleblower who's dealing with retaliation. We're all kind of banding together. In fact, I was honored with this award in 2020. It was called the Marvin Shaw Pillar Award at the 9th Annual Whistleblower Summit. They recognized what I was doing, speaking up for other service members who've been discriminated against, and my command was not happy about that. That I was getting an award for essentially turning in them as well as the Family Advocacy Program for what they had done.
So, John, I want to flash up this petition right here. Can you tell us a little bit about this? It looks like you got 5,800. Well, they're going up. I just put it down in the comments. If you guys want to sign up, it looks like people are hopping on it right now. But could you tell us a little bit about this petition that you got on change.org?
Yeah, sorry about that. So this change.org petition talks about the Family Advocacy Program. And, we're asking for people to sign it so that we can let members of Congress know that, we believe that service members have the right to serve freely without fear of discrimination in the military. It's a bold legislation. It's very simple. It just essentially changes some of the rules in the Ferris Doctrine that was passed in 1950, and it allows service members to bring claims. Sorry, just a second.
Hey, that's the best part of the show, man.
I know.
Guys, let's light up those comments. Let's thank this guy for his service and for speaking up, because I tell you, you hear the challenges that he had, not only as a person in the military, but I mean, as in this, man. I mean, you really did, man. I thank you so much for standing up for what you believe in. We need more people like you, John.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate the support. I appreciate what you do. I'm pretty new to what you were doing. It was actually my mom who introduced me to your show, because it doesn't just affect me. It affects my family, Calvin's extended, or my son's extended family, and it's by signing that petition. If these listeners can go on there and sign it. More importantly, if you're able to go on to the first website you had shown, it has a PDF of the bill. It's a 5-page. It's not super long. Again, it's short, but it's bold, and it will allow service members to go to court against the military. Again, it's extremely difficult to win the case. It's still a David and Goliath case. Right. My bill just lets people in the arena, right? David can now go into the arena so he can have just a shot at Goliath. And if you're able to, if you're listening, if you're watching this, if you can, send an email to your congressperson or your senator. I think there is some fear of pushback from Congress, but I personally think this is a bipartisan issue. It deals with discrimination. It supports our troops. It has all kinds of protections in there. Again, not just race, but gender, religion, all the Title VII, Title IX protections that every other American has. So. If you're listening, if you're able to go on to that, sign the petition, try and get the word out.
So I think that's crazy too. You said your mom is the one that told you about the show.
Yeah.
You know how common that is? Most of my guests, they're telling me, my mom was watching your show and came and told me, you need to be watching this because they talk about what you're going through. And that makes me feel so good, man. And we need more people, the moms, dads, grandfathers, everybody watching, because you never know who in your family could go through these issues.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I was watching your intro to your show, and when I was really happy to hear that you'd said mothers are welcome, because it's true. If you're a man out there, if you're watching this, you're going through you might be going through your own issues. I ask you to please don't lump all women into the bad category, right? It's not healthy to do that, and some of the best supporters of this bill, some of my biggest advocates have been women throughout this entire. I've been doing this fight for 3 years now, and I can't tell you how many of the people who tell me to keep going, or women will say, my husband's in the military, his ex is doing this, and they'll share his story. Because again, at the top of the show, we had said, why is it that men don't speak out? If you have a strong woman who you have a healthy relationship with, they might speak up for you. And it takes both sides. It takes both men and women to recognize that, this is a problem, that discrimination in domestic violence situations, it happens. One of the arguments that I would like to make is, by having more domestic violence services for men, we can actually reduce domestic violence towards women. We can lower it across the board. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times when an assault happens, if it's a man assaulting a woman, a partner, or same sex, whatever. But if it's a man who's the assaulter, a lot of times there's a heated discussion, there's a heated row, and their mindset is not correct, right? It's not okay to be hitting your partner, and if we can stop that moment from happening, stop someone from making a terrible choice and using violence against their partner, by creating a world in which they, hey, I don't have to yell back at you. Right. I don't have to hit back. I can call the police, and I know they're not going to arrest me, right? Unfortunately, we don't live in that world. I can go to a shelter, and I'm just going to let you cool down, or I'm going to cool down. I'm going to calm down in a shelter, but it's my choice. I want to go to the shelter.
Perfect example, man. Look at what just happened with Johnny Depp. He even had on the tapes, it was the other way around, and he still got his ass handed to him in the court. And I think that's the reason that we speak out about it so much. You got the Harvard study that actually shows 70% of the time women are initiating the domestic violence. That's not what we're seeing on the billboard, and we're not hearing enough of these men speak up about that. And you're right. I've had the guys that come to me, it's like, my wife hit me, I called the cops, they got there, and then she said it was the other way around, and I went to jail. If you make them comfortable and tell them it's okay to speak up, they will speak up. Right now, if they speak up, they're going to get the worst of both worlds.
That's right. And so, my message too, if you're a man and you have a friend, a brother, another man in your life who is having this, and they come to you saying that, these awful things are happening, a lot of times we kind of turn it into a joke, right? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, if you watch like a sitcom, they're still like, oh, he's in the doghouse, he needs to sleep on the bed, or he needs to sleep on the couch. There are women out there who've said, that he made me sleep on the couch, and that's abuse. That's control, that's manipulation. But, you turn on a sitcom and there's a laugh track to it when it happens to a man. I think another thing that's important too is to have the conversation to differentiate between assault and abuse. A lot of people don't know the difference. Assault is an event, and abuse is a process. And a lot of times the only thing that gets any attention, whether it's the police, whether it's the news, whether it's the cops, is an assault, right? An assault is, it could be in the form of a rape, it can be a punch, it could be a kick, it can be, weapons. And it's usually more sensational, it grabs more headlines, like your good friend, right? John Mast,
yep.
He got, that was an event, that was an assault, right? What happened to him? It was tragic. But how many years of abuse do you think he was facing? How much abusive litigation do you think he was going through? How much power and control was, the other side using against him to either get his money or to, drag him through the process of abusing him, of being in control? And again, kids tend to be a very, very powerful weapon that people use against you. So I think you're absolutely right. We need to give men permission to speak up. It's okay to say things are not okay, right? As fun as it is, especially in the military, we love to joke around. We love to, give each other a hard time. But there's a line, and if they're saying that, hey, this is going on, this is happening, don't make light of it. I'll give you an example. I mean, on my ship, I'd be getting angry, all caps texts from my partner about, the water heater, or, breakfast wasn't cooked right or something. And I know that I'm either going to be physically attacked or I'm going to be locked in a room.
I've been there. Just you talking about it just kind of sends flashbacks, man. I know exactly. Yeah. Over the stupidest things.
Yeah, dumbest things, right?
Right.
I actually read a study that the biggest argument is about dishes between,
one of my worst was over a can of ravioli.
I believe it. I totally believe it.
A can of ravioli.
Yeah. Because again, is it really about the can of ravioli? It's about power. It's about control. It's about other things. But anyway, I had said to my chain of command at the time, I said, look, if I die tonight, it was not an accident. Like, no matter what, it was my wife. I didn't give them all the details. I'm just looking at my phone. I know what kind of evening I'm going to have when I get home from work. I tell them, like, seriously, I don't care if it looks like, if it says, Jon Stremel fell on 5 bullets. Like, no, I did not,
I've actually got videos of men saved in case that day was to come.
Yeah.
That's how scared they're getting.
Yes, because she would just break into the house. And again, she later tried to say that she was, the victim in all this. Not until she got an attorney to, kind of twist it all. But I was very fortunate. What I would recommend to others is to document everything you can. The other thing too that I really want to say is being with other men who are victims in the support group that I go to. We suck at texting, right? Like, I just got to say it. I would say 9 out of 10 times women are smarter when it comes to texting. And I cannot tell you how many times.
Because it's all they do all day. I'm just kidding.
Men do it too, but men
screw
themselves because they're trying to prove a point, right? They're trying to be right. They're trying to and they think they're being clever. And I can't tell you how invaluable it is to have other men I can speak to, have a safe space to go to. We can show each other text messages and be like, what would you say to this? How would you respond to this? And I would say the majority of the time is don't engage. Like an internet troll, like a YouTube comment or something, like, just don't engage. And if you think there's about to be an argument or something, just don't text it. Don't text it, because context, tone, all of that flies out the door. And when she copies and pastes that text message, sends it to her lawyer, if there's even the optics of you saying something bad or dumb, it's going to be used against you. And a lot of times, I'll say in my particular case, she would get my reaction to physical abuse, or my reaction to her locking me in a room, whatever, breaking dishes, slamming doors. She broke down a couple doors. My reaction is what she would say, oh, look, he's reacting. Look at him. He got upset.
It's the gaslighting. That's the guy. I just talked to, I made the meme. I don't know if you saw the meme I made last week. Sometimes they want to paint you with that smear campaign to be this certain person. They know personal details about you. This is a person that you either still love or that once you loved, and you told them these personal details, and they know how to push those right buttons to get that reaction that they're wanting to get, so they can take the camera and take a snapshot and see that's who he is. I told you that's who he is. Not everything deserves a reaction, guys. Keep it to yourself no matter how hard it gets.
That's true. I personally, some people like to do breathing techniques. I do a grounding exercise.
Yeah.
It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grounding exercise. So I identify 5 things I can see, 4 things that I can touch, 3 things I can hear. I take 2 deep breaths, and then I just take 1 minute. So it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I ground myself in the situation, right? So I'm not losing my head. In the military, we say you're not going into the black, right? Where you're just not yourself. I highly recommend an article. I actually wrote an article that your viewers, listeners can go check out. I think I might have forgotten to share it with you, Eric, but if anyone Googles 11 warning signs that your military command is gaslighting you, I based the article off of another article written by, I'm forgetting her name, but I credit her in my article as where I got this from. 11 warning signs that your partner is gaslighting you. I have a very toxic relationship with my partner, and unfortunately, I've gotten a very toxic relationship, with the military. Not 100%. There are some of the absolute best people I've ever met in the world, were in the military, and they're still there. Some of them are a little bit louder, and some of them are a little bit quieter, but they're fighting for me. But you have a relationship with you, and sometimes it's work. If you're not in the military, it could be your employer, your boss, your supervisor who's gaslighting you. Those kinds of techniques are they're very effective. And again, that goes back to that difference between assault and abuse. That gaslighting is the process of abusing somebody, and it's usually a cycle, right? Part of gaslighting is the honeymoon phase where I'm so sorry, my partner and her family, they would all call me and say, oh, please don't divorce, oh, please, oh, she's so sorry, please don't leave her, you're the best thing that's ever happened to her. My partner, she had drug and alcohol issues and rehab, and they would make me feel guilty. Oh, if you leave her, she's going to relapse, or, she hasn't been to jail since she's been with you. And, they know I'm thinking about leaving. And so unfortunately, gaslighters, they get other people to come in. My partner did this, and I recommend that, anyone listening to this don't do this either, which is create an echo chamber of people who just agree with you. That can be a problem. So,
social media can make that happen too. You got to be careful with that. You got control of what you want to see. Sometimes people telling you what you don't want to hear is what you need, because that's how you learn. It's how you get out of that echo chamber. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's great. And just like how, you have this awesome platform where you can help dads out, like I was saying before, don't cut all women out of your life, right? Just to do it. Go on other social media platforms. Don't unfriend everybody on Facebook who has a different political view or, doesn't like the same football team or whatever. It's good to have people who can challenge you, because it can also be dangerous if you have that echo chamber. We're very good at recognizing when other people bring in, your in-laws, their family, their friends. I got people on the other side of the country who've never been to Hawaii, who, her friends and family who are going on Facebook and saying all these things that, they have no idea what what our relationship is like. A lot of this happens in the middle of the night in the dark, and but she's telling all these people to fight for her, and this is the one truth, and it's easy for me to see. But then I also make sure that I don't create an echo chamber where I don't hear differing opinions too. So I think it's if you're out there and you're going through this, it's it's like comfort food, right?
Right.
To just listen to people who agree with you. But if you have like trustworthy friends who, they can call you out, right, on your BS. If it's like, hey, dude, what you're doing to her, you shouldn't do that. Or like, you need to stop saying bad things about her, right, in front of your kid. I have, if I'm talking to my family, if I think my son is in earshot, we have code words, right? We don't say her name because I don't, again, I don't need to add any fuel to the fire. I don't need to make her seem worse. There is no world in which a small kid needs to be reminded of, the abuse they faced when they were a toddler, right? How does that help my kid? Would it make me feel good, schadenfreude, if I were to like say, hey, your mom did this, I never do any of that stuff because one, I know my son is smart enough to figure it out on his own. And when he is old enough to look back, I want him to know that like, look, I didn't say anything, but I didn't groom you to think a certain way. I didn't feed you answers. And you don't even want the optics, right? Because you'll probably get accused of it anyways. So you got to be super, super careful if you are around your kids. There is no reason for them to know about that stuff. And so finding ways to talk to them, having other, going to, I think mental health is good for everybody, right? I think everyone should go and talk to someone, especially men, right? I think we're afraid to go do that. I think we should do it. And I think it's good if you can have somebody who's trustworthy, maybe even people who have some kind of training on like how do you navigate co-parenting if the other parent is abusive, but they're still in your life. How do you do that? That's not easy. And so I definitely needed help, and I still get help. I still talk to people, and I'm a big advocate for that. And speaking of which, going back to the military, we have to do a physical test. We have to do push-ups. We have to run. We have to get a physical assessment twice a year. Maybe someday I'll have another bill or something, but I think we should have a mental health assessment twice a year too, because it's not mandatory, and there's a lot of people who need it. And I think just the hey, let's check in, let's see how you're doing, let's talk. Is there anything going on? Military has a horrible suicide problem. I think having a mental health check twice a year. We have a ton of people who went to psychology school who are out of a job. Let's sign them up for the military. Have them talk to people. That might be for another show, but one bill at a time, I guess.
Yeah, brother, and we're getting kind of close to this, and I know it would seem that we would do this at the beginning of the show, but I wanted you to come on here and talk about what you went through, some of the things that you're trying to do, and I want to go back to the very beginning, because there might be a father, there might be a mother in here that is hearing this, and they are going through similar situations. When did you start recognizing the abuse? Did it start off intense right away, or did it get worse over time? And as it did, what were some of the steps? What was going through your head? And talk somebody through that process that might be about to face that. I'm going to pull you up by the screen by yourself so you can talk directly to them and tell them the warning signs that they need to be watching out for and what you suggest they should do.
Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. So one of the things that I personally had an issue with, one of the things I needed to work on was how to react to red flags. I was very good at saying, hey, that's a red flag, or she shouldn't be saying that, or that didn't feel right. But I didn't know what to do when it happened. And the V word, right? Victim. I never thought of myself as a victim. Again, that's also part of I had to recognize my own unconscious bias of what a victim is. I just didn't see myself as that until I started to speak out. And it was actually a woman who I had spoken to who had a background in domestic violence who had said, "You're the victim of domestic violence and abuse, and you need to get some help." A lot of it, I would say, has to deal with self-care. I know that's kind of easy to say, but if you don't see yourself as worthy to get help, you're not going to get help. So with me, I had a lot of, I didn't have any self-love. I was in such a bad situation that, I first needed to recognize that I did not deserve this. This is not my fault. And if this is happening to you, you don't deserve to be in that situation. And there's all kinds of different levels. Sometimes it is just, boom and assault, and it happens from there. And that's when you realize, whoa, this is a problem. I think what tends to happen is that abuse happens over time, and it's sometimes checkered with assaults, or sometimes there might be one big assault that makes you like wake up and go, whoa, this has been a long time coming. I've been in an abusive relationship. This is a problem. And I know with men, a lot of times we think and with women too, honestly, I speak to female victims too, which again, is good to get out of that echo chamber. Speak to if you can, be in touch with their community as well. They don't think they deserve anyone better. And a lot of times the partner is telling them, you don't deserve any better. You won't get anyone better than me. Right. And so you start to believe it. You start to believe, oh, I better make this work or else, no one's going to love me. And that's what I was believing too. And, I wish I had spoken up sooner. I say that, but I don't say that with regret, because, a lot of my fears were real in terms of people weren't going to believe me. There was no place for me to go as a man. So, there really wasn't anywhere for me to go. But somebody cares. Somebody cares about you. If you're going through this situation, you might not know, or you might not have found that person yet to talk to who can help you, but you don't deserve. Nobody deserves to be in a horrible, abusive, toxic relationship. And I'll leave you with this: a question that you can ask if you're not sure if this is abuse, or you're not sure, should I say something about this? If you have a kid, this is if you have a kid, or if you don't have a kid, we all have a mom and a dad, or a parental figure. Ask, if this was happening to my kid, how would I want them to react? If my son, was an adult and he was with a partner and she was saying these things to him, would I be okay with that? No. What would I say to my son? And then what you would say to your daughter or your son, try to say that to yourself. Like, for example, my weight has been fluctuating. I would just not eat and not sleep for days. And I had to ask myself, if my son came to me and said, Dad, I haven't eaten in days, what would be the first thing I do? All right, I'll cook you something. You got to eat, son. Right? So if you're having like self-love issues, sometimes stepping out and going, okay, who do I love unconditionally? My kid. So what would I tell them? And then just give yourself that advice.
Absolutely, man. Hey, dude, I appreciate this. I appreciate you coming and sharing a little bit of this. I'm going to pull one more thing on the screen before we leave. I know this was a fundraiser you had started. Could you tell everybody a little bit about this? And I'm going to throw the link down in the description.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine started this for my son and I. It's a GoFundMe, Justice for Calvin. I know that, hey, if you're listening to this, chances are you probably got your own financial issues. So, if you're not able to donate, I totally understand. But if you want to throw out $1 even, and just a message of support, that would be super helpful. or if you know people, if your uncle is Scrooge McDuck and you want to send it to him to donate some, we're using this for legal fees, not just, for custody and divorce, but also, the legal fees that go with introducing new legislation for this bill, and which will, of course, help my son, and it'll help generations of military service members as well. If this bill does pass and service members can serve without, with that, having that safety net of, hey, we can file a claim in court, the Military Anti-Discrimination Act should allow that to happen and give them a fighting chance. So, I really appreciate you, Eric. I appreciate all your, listeners and watchers. I hope, we talked about some good things. I hope there's some people out there who can relate. And if you're in the military, especially, thank them for their service, and I really appreciate your time and the platform.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate everything you do. Thank you for standing up for what you believe in. Thank you for not being afraid. And guys, if this is something that's going on with you out there, I'm begging you, please start speaking up. The world cannot hear what you don't say. I think Dr. Warren Farrell said that best. We've got to start speaking up, and we've got to let people know what's going on. If you don't and you stay silent, these things are never going to change. Just coming on and telling everybody the aftermath is not helping anything. Let's get proactive and make sure that we are facing this head on before it happens. I know, John, we put a few links down there telling people how to get the GoFundMe, the petition, and to read your blog. Where can people keep up with you if they want to know what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for the plug. The website, the militaryantidiscriminationact.com. So it's really, I know it's a mouthful. It's just one word, militaryantidiscriminationact.com. If you sign the change.org petition, you can sign up for a newsletter. And that is really seems to be the best way. There's also a great article in the Honolulu Civil Beat that was done by a journalist by the name of Kevin Nodell. Great article about discrimination in my case and the family advocacy program and the issues of domestic violence in the military, not just for men, but for all victims of domestic violence in the military. There's a great article you can look for at Honolulu Civil Beat, and you can read a little bit more about my story there. But really, yeah, the best way is to sign the petition, and please reach out to your senator or congressperson. Shoot them an email, send them a copy of the bill, send them the website, and let them know that you support it, and you want them to support it too.
All right, brother. Hey, appreciate it, man. I'm going to give you a little salute. Keep us updated on it, and we'll probably be talking to you again in the future.
All right, great. Thanks, Eric. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, everybody, stick around. Later on this week, we're going out to cover the tragic murder of John Mass, so you probably won't hear much from us for the rest of this week. We might be streaming the service. I will let you guys know. Until then, stay cool, stay dad, and we'll catch you later on down the road.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We are fighting for the rights of parents worldwide. If you want to help support our podcast and for us to continue this mission, please join us at patreon.com/dadtalktoday. You will find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, CloutHub, Parler, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, the podcast app, Google, Apple Podcasts. We're a little bit of everywhere. And guys, every time you like and subscribe, you help us continue this mission. Thank you, and we will see you next time.